expatiating pianissimo on some susceptibilities of the Ivan Ilyich example that Heidegger has furnished in order to say something more about the so-called Eigentlichkeit or Ohnmost, also translated authentic possibility of Dasein in Tod or death. I just read something about the comparison of two terms with respect to Napoleon, where the author said either he had that youthful sense of immortality, or he was the kind of man who kept learning even on the deathbed. The second part of this statement I find very cryptic. I don't know how to whether this is supposed to be a pleonasm in some sense, that the first part about the youthful immortality added to the second part, that this was in a way somebody who had the sense of humor of a 8-year-old boy, but who had enough self-reflection to realize that that's what he was like. Napoleon kind of like that. I would say probably, actually, I would favor that interpretation. He realized that he had this childish sense that he should keep fighting on and on as though he were going to live forever, which strikes me as a nihilistic quality. I think it goes against all countries that ever existed. It's very moralistic. It's very moralistic. Because if you're a Japanese traditionally, then there's suicide is always something you could choose, and it wasn't regarded as with a moral flavor. It didn't have this sharp moral flavor. And neither did it have anything like a sense of calculus about whether your life would be better or worse if you stayed alive. It wasn't a mercenary function the way it seems like for Napoleon. But on the other hand, maybe we could just read. Maybe the way to read it is just the immature quality amounts to this. It's just that he can't reach the level of reflection that Heidegger reaches, and then state it manfully and take that as the path. But instead, it's like, he just doesn't really take death seriously. And then if he really sees, he'll learn. But that's what I wanted to get to, the superimposition of that moment of the deathbed and learning on the deathbed with the whole story of, which expands it out just only to the time, the end of the life, mainly of Ivan Ilyich, is what I want to think about. I don't know the beginning of the story, how many years before his actual death it starts, but it's like basically, you could say, Heidegger saying, here's everything I can say about death in the context of this Dasein has its own or extreme. I guess they say, was I incorrect to say the ownmost at the beginning? Is it only the extreme? Maybe it's just the extrememost, which would actually be even much less. That would be kind of analogous to the Aristos in the Republic, that the one form of government is the Aristos form of government, or the best form, but that's not about the form of politeia itself. It's about a specific species of politeia. Um, yeah, maybe, yeah, so maybe it's that, yeah, Dasein has all the kinds of uh, Möglichkeit or possibilityness or something, and or it has this basic feature of possibilityness, and then it has all kinds of species of it. And maybe that's not even in fact, maybe that doesn't even reach the essence of Dasein. What I'm suggesting here is that the Socratic question. I think Boris Groys puts it this way: like Socrates says, "Prove to me that there's death," and you can't really prove it from the point of view of a living person. But then in this sense, what I want to say is what Heidegger is saying is, he's putting down, here's everything that I can say about death, and then judge for yourself from the phenomena, as it were, judge for yourself by the truth of what's down. And then one suggestion is like one thing he knows about death is here's this beautiful story by Tolstoy that shows how man, only when he was about to die, has learned that death exists, and then he starts making this comparison between supposed laws of the way human beings are. All men are mortal. This is a man. Therefore this man is mortal. This kind of syllogistic rule of Aristotle's analytic logic. Then he flashes before himself as a specific case of this rule, and he doesn't even know. And the rule is so generic, and he thinks to himself, but is this generic rule really capturing what happened to me, and so on. And then there's a high literary expression of that. And then Heidegger presents, as it were, the play of the world that one lives in, with the supposed law-like rules, which in a way we're constantly consulting within ourselves, and says, well, here's a picture of that relation and how it works, and it involves this question of death and whether death actually exists or not. Yeah, so in a way, when it's said, the I am, the question of the I am, like the way this is sometimes used, possibly, so like my spiritual advisor uses it that way, I'll say, and I regard that as the philosophic I am, because it's replaced as Genesis 3:14 is the Tyndale translation still shows people were aware of as late as the 1500. The I shall be as I shall be as the preferred translation among the best classical scholars. With the philosophic I am that I am, which appeared in the Cecil B. DeMille version, among others, which I don't say to be depreciatory of it, but it did. But I mean, that was the claim. He claims to follow Philo and Josephus and the real sources, and as best as he can to in making that movie. I think it shows to some extent. It's a well-made film. So that I am could be like an answer to this Socratic question in a way, and also an answer to this question of what Heidegger is showing when he shows that for Dasein, this is the way death appears. It appears as the extreme-most possibility. What does it mean for him to say? So then if he avers it or affirms that he believes in death in this sense, what does that mean? Because he'll still say Dasein is, as it were, that's the question. Is Dasein, as it were, being in addition to Dasein? Is it always that being is something in addition to Dasein? And then the most clear route I see to Heidegger posing that question is that he always assumes that Dasein is not, as Berkeley did also, I believe, because Heidegger mentions this in one of his early essays in the On Becoming Heidegger book. It's included, I think, where he says, yet there's not solipsism because we always assume the existence of the other Dasein, which were, so that Mitsein and Dasein amount to the same thing. It's always in this situation, according to Heidegger. So that's as it were, a datum that's direct out of the Aragnus or the opening, and not a question, and not some secondary question, according to him. So yeah, that could be, yeah, I guess this whole question of the Heidegger's, the Dasein taking itself has something that dies because this seems cogent, is part of the Eigenlichkeit position of Heidegger. Or is it? Because it's kind of an anti-Christian position in a way, or is it? Because it's just the Dasein that would die and not the being.